Today with AI becoming really popular, it seems like there's this big trend about getting into tech again. And I've just been getting a lot of questions recently about how I got into this field with a degree in chemistry, right? I didn't study computer science back in uni, and now I am a consultant for some big clients, mainly doing chatbots and GenAI stuff. But before that, I was doing a lot of data analytics work as well. And well, people are just curious, right? Like, how did I kind of break into the field? What was my journey like? And I thought I'd share that journey today because I think there are some key takeaways that some of you might find useful, and maybe you could apply that in your own career journeys as well. So, when I was studying chemistry, I started falling a bit out of love with it towards the end of my course. So when I had to choose my master's thesis project, I wanted to choose something that had as little chemistry as possible. And I ended up choosing something that was very interdisciplinary. So there was a bit of physics and computer science, there was a bit of maths and chemistry and biology. And the reason was mainly that, right? I was done with chemistry and I wanted to see what other things there were in this big, beautiful world of ours. Now, in that thesis, I got to do a lot of coding for the first time. And I used a program called MATLAB, and that ended up being really fun. And you have to understand, in chemistry, if you make a mistake in the lab, sometimes you have to come back the next week and do everything all over again. Or if you're working with really toxic chemicals, you could harm your health or blow something up. So there were real big consequences if you got stuff wrong. And I remember just thinking very clearly that, hey, if I'm doing coding and if something goes wrong, I just run the code again, right? Just cost me my time. No one has to get hurt. So that was one of the reasons why I started kind of being interested in coding. I ended up doing really well for that project, and I actually got an award, which you can also see. Maybe I'll share it in this video as well. But I was pretty much set on not pursuing science as a career at that point. And I told my supervisor that I really enjoyed the coding portion of my thesis, and I wanted to explore this whole tech thing. People were talking about how much money they were making in the space, how interesting it was that you get to work from home, and the kind of fun stuff that you get to work on, like apps and software and all that just seemed very interesting to me. So I decided to pursue that. But what was I supposed to do? I had a degree in a science subject that wasn't even that popular. Like, a lot of people didn't take it, and so I didn't think I stood a chance if I applied for tech jobs purely based on my chemistry degree. So what I decided to do was start off with a graduate program. And I found I was working very closely with a large telecommunications company in Malaysia as part of my society work. All we had to do was essentially book them rooms, organize events so that they could pitch their programs and CSR activities to our students. And I was just working very closely with them. And they were talking to me about how the company wanted to pivot from a telco to a techco. So there was a lot of investments going on into hiring young talents and training them with tech skills. That sounded exactly like my thing, so I got my start there. But the problem was that program was going to start in January, and I graduated sometime in June. So I had about say I take a month or two off, I had between, let's say, August to December to do something with my life and see if there were anything productive I could do before I get into the tech space. And this one's really important. I really want to mention this. I took up a sales job. And the reason why it's important is because it was in the sales job that I had my first real world data project. So you could do all these sorts of portfolios that people are sharing online. You could do dashboards with sample data sets that you find on Kaggle and stuff like that. And well, some of my friends who are doing classes or boot camps are doing that. But why this was important to me was because for myself, it was the first time that I could see the impact or the benefit of doing good data analytics work for a company. And to summarize what I did, it was essentially a mini CRM. We had a CRM, but it wasn't working that well for us. So I coded something up on a Google Sheet using Google Apps Script, and it helped us track our leads. We could see what feedback we were getting, and we knew which products to push. Very basic stuff, but I was also a beginner, so we couldn't do anything. Well, I didn't know how to do anything advanced at the time, but this is important because what that taught me was you should make the best out of whatever situation you find yourself to be in. And now in my part-time, I teach these data analytics boot camps, and I give that same advice to my students, right? Maybe they come from a fashion field or HR or food and beverage, and I say, get a job where it's more accessible or more realistic for you to apply for. So for example, if you work in fashion, maybe apply for fashion companies and get whatever job that's related to that. And then see the opportunities to demonstrate your data analytics skills within those jobs. Because I didn't start off immediately getting into data analytics as a career, right? If you want to say, strictly speaking, I started off doing sales. So anyways, that was my first data project. And when I eventually interviewed for some of my positions within my graduate program, I had something to talk about, right? I could say, hey, I was in sales and this was a project that I did and this helped us decide which products to push forward, and it was really good and the company and the bosses loved it. And I thought that that was a good experience. Very important. Find whatever opportunities you can get in your current situation. So when I started off my graduate trainee program, just so you know, it was a year and a half, 6 months for each rotation. And in each rotation, you were supposed to do a different role, ideally in a different company. So I started off my first role as a product manager in a digital advertising firm. Again, still a bit far out from the big glamorous tech life I envision, but this is also important. Well, maybe I'll make a separate video on this, but the biggest lesson I got from this experience was that where there is chaos, there's opportunity. Now, the company kept pitching themselves as a startup, so what that meant was there was a lot of agile and a lack of processes, and there were silos and people were kind of doing their own thing. Won't get too into the details of that, but a key thing relating to the whole breaking into the tech space thing is that when I was there, although I wasn't doing data analytics work myself, I was surrounded by people who did data analytics work. And what this meant for me was I was able to ask questions, I was able to know what skills were in demand, and essentially just become a part of that community so that I knew what I needed to do in order to break into that space from a more personal level, right? Because I was actually talking to people who were already in that space. So I was talking to data scientists and software engineers and data analysts. And this was still in the same digital advertising firm. They were just very advanced, and I was lucky to have that. Okay, let's get back on track. So I was a product manager, had a lot of fun, and actually some of the stuff that we were doing, we did so well that me and my buddy started a startup, and we made about $40 a month for about 6 months before we closed up shop and kind of decided to continue working. My next rotation was in cybersecurity. Why cybersecurity? Well, at the time, I just didn't want to pursue a role that was kind of competitive. And for some reason, no one in my batch at the time, aside from this one other girl who already did that cybersecurity rotation, was interested in cybersecurity. So I was like, hey, why not? And I got it pretty much immediately because no one else was going for it. And I learned a lot of stuff there as well. Again, a bit separate from actually getting into data, but still within the tech space. And I thought maybe some of that knowledge would come back to be useful. And spoiler alert, it did end up becoming useful, but more on that later. So here I also had a chance to work with some data analytics tools, specifically Power BI, and I explored my whole interest in data a bit more, and things were going well. I think I had good relationships there, but I knew this wasn't really where I wanted to end up yet. So in my next rotation, I was finally in the data space, as a data engineer or a business intelligence engineer and business intelligence analyst. So I was finally there, but I didn't think I had a good chance of staying within that company because unexpectedly or expectedly, whatever could have happened, the CEO resigned and the company was going through some sort of corporate restructuring. So it was a bit harder for us to be absorbed into the company as permanent full-time employees. But at that point, I went through my whole journey of learning data, cybersecurity, and product management. I was fully into the tech space. And so when I applied outside of the company, I saw one of the big 4 consulting firms were looking for people who wanted to break into the AI and data space. Well, they weren't looking for people to break into it, they just wanted people in it. And that opportunity just seemed to align well with my skill set. So I didn't really have a particular title at that point because I only did 6-month rotations within different tech spaces. But consulting is kind of like that as well. You have your work is based on projects. So one person might be doing 3 different types of roles within the span of 2 years because that's the nature of the projects. And well, I could end it there. That's how I started in that company. And within this company itself, I didn't strictly stick within data. I did a bit of data governance / cybersecurity. This is where it comes back, right? There was one project where they wanted someone who had a bit of cybersecurity and data experience, and I was the only person because I made that really random choice back in my graduate program to take up a cybersecurity role. Now I'm working with generative AI, as most companies are, because it's currently the hot and trendy thing, well, as of this video. And I don't know what I'm going to do next. But I hope that from my journey, you get to see that I didn't directly break into this space, unless you count getting that graduate program breaking into the space, but that was a telecommunications company, and it was a graduate program, meaning they accepted anyone. And I was just very intentional about what I chose to pursue in terms of the roles. But I hope that journey kind of shed some light on how someone could break into the tech space without a computer science degree. I would say my key takeaways are just to make sure that you make the best out of whatever situation you find yourself to be in. Whatever skills you have now, start there and see if you can do data analytics or technology stuff within your current situation. And if you could do that, you'll end up with a portfolio of real life scenarios or applications of those skills, which you can then use to apply for your dream tech job. So I think that's all I want to share in this video. I hope that was of benefit. There'll be more to come on this channel. I'm hoping to talk to other people who may have also gone through the same journeys. It won't be specifically technology. Maybe we'll talk about other things like how they became a sustainability consultant or a cybersecurity person or a fashion designer, what have you. We'll see. I'm hoping to kind of make some content around that. Thanks for watching.